The Congress of the People launches its election manifesto at Hammanskraal in Chabane. President Cyril Ramaphosa is today expected to arrive in Kigali in Rwanda ahead of the 30-year commemoration of the genocide against the Tutsis. And the Labour Party and other parties want the Independent Electoral Commission's online portal to be reopened for a day or two for political parties that were unable to upload their documents to do so. A very good afternoon. We're coming to you live from our studios in Johannesburg. Welcome to the first hour of Week in Review on SABC News, the program where we review some of the biggest stories to come out of the week. I am Gustav Kreiling. Now, we invite you to be part of the show, so please share with us stories that made headlines in your view this week. Our studio number is 011 714 0680, 0681 or 0682. Now, the Congress of the People is launching its election manifesto in Hammanskraal, north of Pretoria. Party leader Mosiuoa Lekota is currently on the podium. Let's take you live there now.
The people. We are the people of South Africa. All of us. And you can see in our constitution, all of the groups, whether you are Sotho, Zulu, Xhosa, Indian, colored, whatever you can say, we are all declared the people. And so when you go to parliament, you can speak in any one of the languages of your country, or the language you are born and bred in is also official. There's no longer that thing that only the white people's languages are official languages. Your own mother tongue is also an official language as a result of the struggle we waged until we got here. Now, let me turn very quickly to the conditions of today, because I must really start there. Today we are here, we want to ask the people of South Africa to vote for the Congress of the People. To vote for the Congress of the People. And let me tell you this, all of the nations of the world are entitled to self-defense. All of the nations of the world, including in this country, South Africans, we are all entitled to defend ourselves. Today, there are people in our country who come here, they kill our people. They slaughter our people, men and women. We of the Congress of the People want to say this. The time has come that we must defend ourselves. The people of England have got a defense force. The people of Germany, the people of any country have got a defense force. They defend themselves against those who are their enemies, who kill them. They defend themselves, and they are entitled to do so against the criminals. If you are a criminal, you are an enemy of the people of South Africa. If you are a criminal, you are an enemy of the people of South Africa. And you must listen to me carefully, please. Listen. We, the people of South Africa, are entitled to defend ourselves. We have a right to do so. It's all international. Every nation, including us. So now, anyone who kills the people of South Africa must be met with resistance from us. We will also eliminate them. I'm saying this very carefully. I've thought about this long time. I was a Minister of Defense for 10 years, fighting for peace and leading for peace in countries like the DRC and so on, including in other parts outside of Africa. The people of our country, South Africa, are entitled to defend themselves. The reason we did away with conscription is because the apartheid regime used to only collect white young people, trained them in military things, and used them to kill us. Which is why our people took arms to defend themselves. Which is why President Mandela and others spent so many years on Robben Island. But when that fight between us and the Afrikaners was finished, we said to them, we want peace amongst all the people of South Africa. Now, we even got rid of the death penalty. Said nobody should be killed and all of that. We continue to do that. But the conditions that have resulted now require us, South Africans, and we are ready to lead you. We, the people of South Africa, must defend ourselves. We must defend ourselves, and we want to ask the people of South Africa to vote for the Congress of the People so that we can prepare the people to defend themselves. We are not going to introduce what you call forced conscription, but we are going to introduce military conscription. Not compelled, voluntary military conscription. If there are people who come into this country with weapons and things like that and kill our people, we will meet that force with force. We will respond as we are entitled to do by the international law and international communities. We will train the children of this country. We'll take them and we'll train them. We will arm them. Not to kill you, the people, or anybody who comes here as a friend, but to defend themselves against those who come here to kill our men and women, our young people and so on. We are going to do this. We are going to do this because it's international law. Every nation has a right to defend itself against aggression from elsewhere. So this is what I want to say. The Congress of the People, if you vote for us, we will introduce voluntary military conscription. Men and women, boys and girls, we will teach you patriotism. We will teach you patriotism means the love of your own people, the love of your country. We will not teach you to kill people, just innocent people, and do that. But you must be able to respond when there are people who are killing your people, who are destroying the lives of our people. That we will not allow to happen. And I want to say that without batting an eye, we will not allow anybody. And of course, what's going to happen is that we are going to have to consider whether we must continue to get people who come and kill our people, and then we must take them and put them in the prisons and feed them. and look after them. No, it cannot be like that. Very many nations have before abolished the death penalty. But when circumstances turned as sour as they have turned against us in our country, you must consider whether we should keep people who are killing our people and put them in the prisons which are like hotels, give them free food and look after them. No, we will not do that. We want to take action, very decisive action, to eliminate those who eliminate our people. South Africans must come to terms with this. And when conditions improved, even the other nations which had reversed the policies they had taken earlier began to then remove that and open space. We want you in South Africa, you are visitors or what, you are welcome. But please, we don't want you to come here and kill the people of our country. We will not allow you to do that. And even if you are one of us, you are one of us, but you think that South Africans should be killed just to entertain yourself, I'm sorry, we will not accept you amongst ourselves. This message is very important. I make this message today. I am quite satisfied and convinced there is no other way of solving this problem of the slaughter of our people in the townships, in the cities, in the towns. We can't live with it. It must be stopped. But we want everybody to enjoy South Africa. So what are we going to do? We're going to train the young people, starting with school children. Boy Scouts, we teach you, you become Boy Scout at school. I was also a Boy Scout. You become Boy Scout and so on. And one of the things you learn as a Boy Scout is to look who are the people who are criminals in the community. And you report them to your elders, you report them to the police and so on. Now we have very few police. I must tell you why I'm talking about voluntary military conscription. We're not going to force you to be members of the police force. No, it will be voluntary. Some of you, I know now, some of you want to become police persons, men and women. You will be recruited, conscripted into the armed forces. Armed forces are taught patriotism. They are taught how to use weapons. They are taught how to look after people who are sick. They become doctors, they become nurses, they become each and every. There is nothing in the military which you are not educated and taught to have. Nothing. You are taught how to make a car. You are taught how to build big weapons of war and all of that. Those things you are also taught are to be used to defend the people of your country. Not to kill the people of your country, but to defend them. You are taught those things so that you are able to live in peace with your neighbors and neighboring countries and all of that. You must know that. If you don't know the art of war, you cannot stop enemies who come to you to kill you or to fight you. You must know how to defend yourself, but you must also know you are able to defend yourself so that you can respect other people. That must be very, very clear. South Africans must give us the right to govern, and you will see what we will do. We will make you very proud people, safe in the conditions of this country. But that is one of the points that I want to make clear today. We want all of you to get education. It's a critical thing. We must educate all of you so that when you are educated, you can be of service to the people, you can know how to do things that needs to be done. It is critical that a lot of the children that are busy using drugs in the townships here and all of that, why are they doing that? Because they don't have jobs. Because they don't have jobs. If you don't send them to school, if you don't give them jobs, they will not be able to do anything but to smoke these drugs. And who's bringing these drugs here? We know the people who bring the drugs around. You will know them. You know them. They live amongst you. You need to tell us who they are. And these ones who are trained in the military must arrest them. The police must arrest them. And they must eliminate, remove them from our society. And then, when there is no drug trafficking, there will be better conditions of life for the people of our country. I make this plea to you, the people of South Africa. If we had not been defended and protected in our time, we would not have been here today. And we must today ensure that our children are sent to schools. The money that you pay when you buy clothes, you buy food, you buy cars and so on, that money which is called VAT, value added tax, is the money that goes to government, to parliament there, so that that money must be used to look after you, to build for you hospitals, to build schools, roads, and so on. That is your money. It is not my money. I'm a member of parliament, but that's not my money. It's not the money of those who are stealing it. It's your money. Please, when you are asked to vote, you are asked to choose men and women that you know and trust, that they will not go to parliament, take your money, and steal it for themselves. When you are sent there, it is so that the money you have paid in VAT and all of that, that the men and women you send to parliament must take that money and provide education for your children, hospitals. There's no roads out here. There's no water out here. We came here because we knew that the people of Hammanskraal have been dying of cholera. There's no water for the people of Hammanskraal. Why is there no water? Why? What happens to the money that all of us pay in the form of VAT and so on? What happens to that money? We are seeing men and women. Zondo told us about the men and women who stole the public funds, and they are still roaming around. Considerable numbers of them are still sitting in parliament. They are the people who stole your money. And when we say vote, we don't mean choose somebody who's got a BMW. We want somebody who want to go there and take your money and create good conditions of life for the people. Don't vote for somebody who's got a BMW or a Mercedes-Benz or something like that. He or she may have stolen your money to buy those things, those cars that they are driving. You live in communities with men and women you know are trustworthy. Habano utswa tšhelete ya lena, bele ba tsebang hore no ba hlompha setšhaba. Those are the people we want you to send to parliament, so that those people can do for you that which you need. And please, you mustn't forget this. You must not say you are tired of voting, because every time You are paying VAT. It's your money. It's the money of your children. It must benefit you and the children. How many of you know how to grow mealies, fruit, and so on? We need you to be sent for education in agriculture and various fields so that you can cultivate food and you can feed your people and feed your children. Unless you get that kind of education and training, you will be living in hunger. You will be watching your children die of absolute poverty. Please, we want some of you to go also into training in mining. Look how many criminals are in the mines today. The mines are full of criminals. Very many of them who even come from outside our country. But those mines is money that's coming out of those mines. It's your money, it's your minerals. They should be used to uplift you, to educate your children, to build homes for the people. But how many of you are trained in those fields? Now I believe we don't even have electricity. What happened to the electricity? You know, the sun, out of the sun is coming electricity. God has given us free electricity. But why is electricity not there? The towns, the cities, the townships, dark. What happened to the people that were working under apartheid, making sure that every day we've got electricity? What happened to them? Some of us drove them out. But we were advised at the time by the leadership, do not get rid of these people who know these arts. You need them to teach your children how to make this electricity so that when they retire, your children can have this electricity and build it forward for all of us. We cannot.
The leader of COPE, Moseo Lokota, there at the manifesto launch in Hammanskraal, north of Pretoria, talking along a military theme, saying that they want to introduce voluntary military conscription to defend ourselves in South Africa. Also saying don't vote for someone with a BMW or Mercedes-Benz. They may have stolen it. That's the COPE manifesto launch in Hammanskraal happening at this moment. We'll be back with Week in Review right after this. Welcome back. The 7th National Assembly Speaker in Democratic South Africa has cut short her stint as the principal office bearer. Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula resigned on Wednesday as Speaker and Member of Parliament amid corruption allegations against her. She handed herself over to police and appeared in the Pretoria Magistrates Court, where she was granted 50,000 rand bail. She's facing 12 counts of corruption in relation to the Prevention and Combating of Corrupt Activities Act and 1 count of money laundering emanating from when she was the Minister of Defence. Now, to better understand how and if at all political heads do get involved in procurement processes, we are joined now by governance expert in the defence industry, Erica Gibson. Erica, good afternoon. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good afternoon, Gustav.
Now, the former speaker, of course, is accused of receiving monies from a company that scored a contract with the SANDF to the value of 104 million rand when she was the defence minister. So when tenders and contracts are negotiated in the defence industry, is it a bottom-up approach beginning with accounting officers, or is there room for a top-down overture?
There are different groupings of budgets and how the Defence Force is dealing with it. When it's on a grand scale, if one can put it down from the top to the bottom, like in the instance of Mapisa-Nqakula, that is not so well known and doesn't happen so often. I think what is to be noted about her case is that it was clear that the process happened very smoothly, if we are to believe what the whole case was about. There was an impunity. There was a collaboration between the minister and the senior officers and the defence contractor. It didn't only happen once. It was a process. The defence force would pay. Then the contractor would be, or the contractor would be paid. The contractor would pay the middle person, and then from there on, the minister tacked on. Exactly how that happened, I don't know, but I suppose if you're in charge, it's very easy to manipulate.
So the official charge sheet states that Nombasa Ndlovu was at the time the sole director of Mkombe Marine Limited, whose core business was to provide logistic services to the SANDF on a procurement basis. So what exactly does logistic services entail?
In her case, she was a contractor who supplied back. She was contracted to supply backloading services. Backloading is when the Defence Force, like we have the operations in the DRC, and a couple of years ago we were in Sudan as well. You have lots of equipment, so the equipment needs to be moved back and fro, and the Defence Force itself doesn't have the means to do it. So they're contracting companies to supply the heavy lift aircraft like the Illusions and so on to do it. And that's where she came in, and she was initially contracted to supply the services, and then the contract was put on ice for some reason, and she alleged that by then she had already contracted the company supplying the aircraft, because you have to contract these aircraft from abroad. They're not sitting somewhere in South Africa just to go. So then she said, but she had a loss already, and it was agreed upon that she would have future contracts to the value of the original contract to sort of make up for the original one. And that's where the whole thing started. From there on, she got a much bigger contract, and the alleged payments down the line started.
So is that the replacement contract that they're referring to?
Yeah.
Okay.
The original contract was she claimed about 30 million from the Defence Force in damages because she already alluded to having contracted these foreign suppliers of the aircraft. But the next one was for 104 million, which was a much bigger contract, and she was allowed to be the only contractor to be considered for that contract.
So according to the 12 corruption charges against her, it's alleged that first she requested her late Secretary of Defence to approach Ntsondwa Ndlovu and request a payment of 300,000 rand. How plausible is this?
I understand that was due to a personal connection between the contractor and the former Secretary of Defence. He died since. The original contractor and the secretary's wife and the minister. There was some other connection. I'm not too clear on exactly how it worked. So there was almost a friendship connection in there.
So the allegations say that between December 2016 and up to July 2019, she received alleged payments totaling 4.5 million. So if a contract or tender awardee pays such payment requests, would they build that into the quote during the bidding process?
I will almost put my head on a block that there is always, with all these big contracts, there is room or a little bit of extra fat built into the amount of the contract to make provision for a little something on the side, which wasn't apparent immediately with this contract, that she would actually have to cough up at a later stage. So I think it was also a matter of opportunism on the side of the former minister. Maybe, I don't know. But and whether it was just considered this is a soft target, she was allowed this. Let's cash in on the deal.
So for years now, there have been allegations of widespread corruption in the whole defence sector, the arms deal trial in South Africa being an example. And it includes multiple companies and countries in those claims. Is the industry vulnerable to corruption of its governance?
Depending on who you speak to, the defence industry is considered to be probably the I wouldn't say the most corrupt, but intermediate services and agents and that sort of thing are part of the core. It's always there in all the big international transactions. You will find some reciprocation in some other way.
Where does Arms Corps fit in? Are they also part of the normal procurement process in the Department of Defence?
Arms Corps is only involved in the initial, in some of the bigger contracts for procurement, not for the day-to-day operations as such. That the Defence Force handles itself. It's got a logistics unit. It's got a central procurement centre who handles. They divide it up in amounts. On a unit level, you're allowed to handle about up to R1 million. If it's above R1 million, you have to go out on tender at the Central Procurement Centre. And the bigger amounts are handled on a higher level. So they distinguish between the different levels. Now, it's necessary to say the Central Procurement Centre at some stage was so embroiled in all sorts of corrupt activities that they basically fired the total top structure. That was about 4 or 5 years ago, and they replaced the whole management, and they built in some checks and balances to try and fill up the gaps. But there's opportunity, and it's sometimes it's the individuals who manipulate certain documentation, or they delay someone's quote a little bit, or they let another bidder know, listen, this guy is a little bit lower than yours. So there's a little bit of manipulation, and I suppose it happens across the board. The whole, the public service is not. It happens everywhere.
Erica, thank you so much for joining us here this afternoon. Erica Gibson is a governance expert in the defence industry. We'll be back right after this with the Week in Review. Welcome back, and remember, we invite you to be a part of the show, so please share with us stories that made headlines in your view. This week, our studio number is 011 714 0680, 0681 or 0682. That's 011 714 0680, 0681 or 0682. Now, one of the accused in the July 2022 shooting of Collins Chabane Mayor Moses Maluleke has denied any involvement in the crime. Isaac Mudau, who is believed to be the link that connected the 5 accused and the deceased, testified in his defense at the High Court in Polokwane. Mudau and his co-accused are being tried on several charges that include murder and attempted murder, which relate to Maluleke's fatal shooting at his home Kukundu outside Malumulele.
The trial into Maluleke's shooting is expected to be wrapping up soon. The state has now closed its case after calling a total of 5 witnesses. The 3 legal representatives who respectively represent the 5 accused have started making their case. Accused number 1, Chabane Madozi, was the first to be called to the witness stand earlier this week. The legal representative of accused number 3, Isaac Mudau, then called him to the witness stand. Mudau's testimony in chief focused on rebutting the testimony of state witness and a former accused in the matter, Abatakari Murauzi. Murauzi previously testified that Mudau linked the accused with each other and with accused number 4, Wiseman Baloyi, who knew Maluleke. Murauzi further testified that Mudau recruited the accused and 2 additional men to go to Maluleke's house to rob him of 10 million rand. Mudau has now denied any involvement in the crime.
Wakamse ukusuka unenda nabuziswa dzimbudziso dza muthu ene otodamba papanda court achikusumisori ene zvitu zvina kuamba zvodze utokhochiwa.
I can ask a question that why I'm being cross-examined with questions of a person who came here before court and clearly indicated that he was coached.
Towards the end of his testimony, Murauzi told court that he had been coached and intimidated by the prosecutor and the police as he was testifying. Mudau's legal representative now questioned if Murauzi had been coached to implicate his client.
Before you can answer any question, I want to point it out that the numbers or the cell phone numbers Mr. Mlaudzi was coached and even given the handwritten notes by the prosecutor to implicate you were read into the record, and nobody was aware that the witness was coached to implicate you about the numbers. That was revealed later. Even the court could not even notice that he was reading from a document. So I want to read the numbers that Mr. Mlaudzi read into the record.
The state, however, told Mudau that there was evidence of his involvement in the killing.
My lady, the evidence is clear before court by Mr. Mlaudzi that Mr. Mudau is standing before court. He is the one that first broke the news to him about a man who was in possession of about 10 billion rand. And Mr. Mlaudzi described the role that the accused played. That is the basis on which I'm saying he organized a lawyer for Mr. Mlaudzi because he knew that he was involved. That's the basis of my.
The trial is expected to be on the roll until April 12th. Biman Baloyi, SABC News, Polokwane.
Right, back to our main story now to speak more on the political fallout following the charging of an appearance in court of the former Speaker, Nosiviwe Mapimpi-Nqula, on charges of corruption. We are joined by political analyst Professor Ntsikelelo Breakfast. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for being with us. Where do you stand on the reason behind recent developments, given some of your compatriots believe that political motives could have fueled the case against the former minister and National Assembly Speaker?
I think the president, alongside the ANC, they have not done themselves any favor by turning a blind eye to the allegations when they rose to prominence in the beginning. Because the allegations, they rose to prominence, I think, in 2021. And the president and the ANC, they turned a blind eye to them. So the question that begs for an answer is why of late the allegations have gained credence. Of course, I mean, one can say, you know, the other accused, Nombasa Ndlovu, struck a deal with NPA. No wonder the case was consolidated with, you know, a great deal of evidence. But my reading of the situation is that I get the sense that the ANC or government, they are trying to frame a grand narrative that they're taking a stand against corruption. And I think she has been used as a case in point or sacrificed. I'm not convinced that she's the only one, and I'm not saying that two wrongs make a right, because 2 weeks ago, there was a story that was reported by one of the weekly newspapers that, the president was briefed in private about this imminent arrest, which begs the question if, those reports are anything to go by, that what does the warrant of arrest have to do with the president? And based on that, I think one cannot rule out the possible political dynamics at play. The other story that broke was last week by the same newspaper that a senior member of the ANC in high places was responsible or was cracking a joke about this, and there was also name dropping by the minister in court. So I don't think that we can rule out the possibility of politics at play, but at the same time, that doesn't take away the validity or the invalidity of these allegations, because they're quite serious.
So facing 12 counts of corruption and 1 count of money laundering is surely enough to shatter any politician's future, whether eventually found guilty or not.
No, of course, and the question that begs again is, what does a minister have to do with tendering? Because she is accused at the time when she held the position of being a minister, that she accepted, kickbacks or a bribe. And a Public Finance Management Act makes it clear that there is a dichotomy between the political realm and the bureaucratic aspect, that there's a separation there. When you are a minister, you have nothing to do with tenders. So I think this point needs to be emphasized, that the political elite must resist from getting involved in such activities.
So the state says that it has Section 204 witnesses in its case against her, and we often hear multiple allegations of politicians with their hands in the cookie jar. So would lifestyle audits strengthen the existing vetting processes?
Yes, I think they could have, because the president made a commitment that he did not honor in the beginning, in the build-up to his ascendancy to the position that he holds, that he was going to initiate that, but he did not do that. Which means that he was not committed to that issue. So I think that can go a long way, because what we have seen is, the employment of political capital and social capital in pursuit of personal accumulation by the political elite to amass wealth, in order to have upward social mobility. And I think that issue needs to be addressed. And unfortunately, the state machinery is used as a center of accumulation to amass that wealth.
So what is the role of the parliamentary declaration of interest process? Is it solely reliant on what the members want to declare?
Yes, the legislative institution is one of the control measures over the executive institution, and should demand accountability on such issues. But I think because the ANC over the past couple of years has been hegemonic in parliament, and they operate on orders from HQ, so sometimes they tend to turn a blind eye on such issues. And if you want to break ranks, you can be disciplined. But I think in future, we might see, this culture of covering up being done away with.
So there seems to be some backlash against President Cyril Ramaphosa and his declarations that he's made regarding the former speaker. And he said that her resignation belies her integrity. She resigned because of her integrity. Does he support her, or is it playing to the gallery here?
Well, from my reading of the situation, it's not quite clear, because, there was a time when I thought, interestingly, the issue of Phala Phala happened while she held the position of being a minister of defense. And I don't know whether, obviously, let me put it like that, she was well aware about the issue, but, didn't say anything. But I think the fallout started when she contradicted the president regarding the unrest, and then she was removed. So I'm not sure if that relationship was restored. You know, so I get the sense that there have been some trust issues in that regard, because maybe or maybe not, but maybe if she was a loyalist of the president, I don't think that we would have seen the turn of events of late.
So in a surprise turn of events, the prosecution announced that the state was now planning to add another accused to join her there in the dock during the next court date on June the 4th. After the search and seizure at her home, could we see more politically exposed individuals implicated?
Yes, I think so, because by law, and I'm not a lawyer, but I think there is a time frame that you can add charges. So I think the state is using that strategic advantage, you know, this a window period to sneak in other allegations.
The office of the Speaker, that office, one of the highest offices in the land constitutionally, it's quite important. How significant is it that this whole prosecution is happening to the person occupying the Speaker's chair?
Well, I mean, I agree with the argument that she was on par with the president in the sense that she was the embodiment of the legislative institution. She was the face of the legislative institution, which is a lawmaking body, which is a very important institution. So I think this is a setback for Parliament. I think the ANC and Parliament have been dealt with a blow in a big way. And I think this could have been avoided if the matter was addressed when the story broke in the beginning, before she was made the Speaker.
Did you expect her to resign? We don't have such a strong culture of political resignation in South Africa as they do in Britain, perhaps.
I think the question that begs for an answer is to whether she resigned by herself or she was coerced. You know, there are many possibilities, because if she had resigned by herself, she would have resigned on the spot when the allegations were leveled against her. So, and also, I mean, I don't think there is a need for a step-aside principle, because she doesn't hold any public office, and also she doesn't hold any strategic political position within the ANC. So why would you invoke the step-aside principle? So it doesn't apply. After she resigned, I think the step-aside principle fell away. Of course, the ANC as a party that deployed it, they can hold it accountable by, you know, bringing it before the Integrity Commission.
So in a statement in court, she referred to her financial position, her health, the poor conditions in the South African prisons. Do you think that she had a real fear of being incarcerated in those prisons run by the government?
Well, one of the provisions of the Constitution, Section 9, is that everyone is equal before the law. That's my definition of the rule of law, in my opinion. And the Constitution is the supreme law. So I think we are all equal before the law. But, and it's a big but, the mere fact that she could be out on a bail of 50,000 signifies that she is in a class privileged position, because if she was an ordinary person, she would never have been able to raise that kind of money. And the mere fact that even though we are equal before the law, she was able to submit an application to put her arrest on hold signifies that, again, that I think your class positionality does give you some privilege in terms of preventing certain things from happening from you, as opposed to ordinary people.
So, Professor Breakfast, we have a caller on the line now this afternoon, Sabelo in Soweto. Do you want to ask Professor Breakfast something? Oh, so the caller just dropped. So unfortunately, he's not there anymore. So let me ask you then, do you think this whole ordeal is deeply embarrassing to her?
No, of course. I mean, it is. I mean, you know, I mean, a person who's on the verge of walking out of government doesn't want to appear in court on allegations of corruption. I mean, I think she was on the verge of, she's not even on the list of the ANC as far as I'm concerned, meaning that she was on the verge of walking out of government, and to bow down on something like this, I mean, it's a blow. It's a blow in a big way.
Thank you so much for joining us here this afternoon to speak to us about this big story of the week, Professor Ntsikelelo Breakfast. And we're going to be back with Week in Review right after this. The Congress of the People launched its election manifesto in Hammanskraal in Tshwane. President Cyril Ramaphosa is today expected to arrive in Kigali in Rwanda ahead of the 30-year commemoration of the genocide against the Tutsis. And the Labour Party and other parties want the Independent Electoral Commission's online portal to be reopened for a day or two for political parties that were unable to upload their documents to do so. Good afternoon. Welcome to the second hour of Week in Review, live from our Johannesburg studios. And this is the program where we review some of the biggest stories from the week. I'm Gustav Freiling, and we invite you to be part of the show. So please share with us stories that made headlines in your view this week. Our studio number 011 714 0680 or 0681 or 0682. Now, this week saw the increase in fuel and electricity prices. The tariff hikes are fueled by factors such as inflation and interest rates, as well as the exchange rate of the rand against the US dollar, thus adding pressure on already stressed consumers. Low-income households are the hardest hit when the cost of living spirals out of control. Joining us now for more on this is Matthew Parks. He's the Parliamentary Coordinator for the Congress of South African Trade Unions, COSATU. Matthew, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having us.
So on the back of the recent fuel and electricity price increases, what can stressed households do to deal with these challenges?
There's very little, to be honest, that stressed households can do. Inflation and then the fuel price hikes is because of international factors like the war in Ukraine, Middle East conflicts and so forth. We import oil, so there's not much we can do around that as a country. There's very little government can do about it. But what we can do, particularly from government side, is to look at reducing the taxes on the fuel price, because about a third of our fuel price regime is consumed by taxes. Government has done it before. They made commitments to reviewing it, and we have raised it at NEDAC, and we'll continue to push that as COSATU with them, because that can give relief to workers and to commuters immediately. We had managed to put into place a 253 billion rand debt relief package for Eskom, because Eskom is a huge factor towards inflation as a country. Last year we had an 18% increase in Eskom tariff hikes this year. In fact, this month, another 12% hike. So we're hoping that that debt relief will begin to assist Eskom to be less dependent upon double-digit tariff hikes. There is a need to get Transnet and Metro rail lines fully operational, because that'll help protect food as well as other products, as well as commuters from inflation on the fuel pump as well. So I think for us, those are the critical things, as well as seeing what can be done to actually grow the economy, to create more jobs. Because when workers are struggling, it means more family members are putting pressure on them because of the high level of unemployment. So we need to look at some of those factors to help ease the pain on workers. And I think that for us is the critical intervention point.
So companies like Eskom reflect the cost of living issues in its own operations, with its huge debt levels, the rising cost of fuel like coal and diesel, having to invest in new technology and maintain its current assets with not enough money to do so, and also to pay its staff fairly. So Eskom would say it needs this increase. Are we in a catch-22 type of situation with electricity prices?
Yes and no. I think, so yes, Eskom would feel inflation like any other company, sure. But Eskom also is in a mess because of the amount of mismanagement, of corruption, of looting, etc. We still have a problem with that at Eskom. Often at times you find there's internal corruption in collusion with the private sector as well, to the supplies of parts, of diesel and so forth. So the Eskom tariff hikes don't always reflect a genuine, legitimate tariff cost. So I think that's part of the issue we've been making with government, that let's clean up Eskom. There has been some progress on that front, because one needs to ensure that what is going into Eskom is not going into the pockets of corrupt persons inside and outside Eskom, but it's actually going towards investment and so forth. But the bottom line is we've had double-digit tariff hikes at Eskom since 2006. There's only so much pain society can take. That's the way we supported the debt relief package, but on condition that Eskom was cleaned up and that we move away from these double-digit hikes, which are simply unaffordable for society.
Matthew, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Matthew Parks, he's the Parliamentary Coordinator for the Congress of South African Trade Unions, COSATU. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back to Week in Review, and we invite you to be part of this show, so please share with us stories that made headlines in your view this week. Our studio number 011 714 0680, 0681 or 0682. Now, to some, the police are doing a good job in fighting violent crime. This after the latest incident in which 9 suspected criminals were killed in a shootout with the police in Marion Hill in KwaZulu-Natal in the early hours of Wednesday. Barely a few hours later, 5 more suspected robbers were gunned down by the police in a foiled cash-in-transit heist in the province of Mpumalanga. Rifles and handguns were reportedly recovered in that operation. However, concerns have been raised on some platforms that the police could be using excessive force when dealing with suspected criminals, and even went as far as asking whether they are acting within the law. Some of the concerns are that sometimes innocent bystanders get caught in the shootouts, especially in incidents of armed robbery and vehicle hijackings. We went around the streets of Johannesburg, and here is what people had to say.
Killing suspects doesn't make sense because, I mean, they're suspects at the end of the day. We're not sure if they are guilty of that crime because it's suspects at the end of the day. So killing them, it doesn't make sense.
But ngizothini ukhumbule ukuthi ama-suspect la ungathola ukuthi in a way kunama-case or kune-crime esibayicommittile before. So ungathola ukuthi ngesinye isikhathi amaphoyisa ayenza umsebenzi wako maybe balinke to some of the crimes so dala bazenza or some of the crime ekudala babafuna labantu labo. So in a way ungathola ukuthi it's one of the most of the criminals sebenze enye i-crime before.
Don't think anyone is above the law. So the killing, obviously, as a man of law, you're working for government, you should be the one who knows better. So I think, no, he deserves something better. He has to rot in jail.
There's still a school of thought, Uguti. Some people believe that they are not working, and also they believe that the crime rate is high. They believe that they must set an example of such, because we're losing investment because of high crime rate. There's high rapes, there's GPV. So sometimes, if you as a person, if you see your life is under threat, what are you supposed to do as a man at work or a woman at work?
If you are holding a gun, you are a threat to the state, not only the state, even the community members that will pass by. So I think they did the right thing to shoot them, because when they take out those guns, they don't even ask. Suspects, they don't even ask. They shoot to kill.
You don't have to negotiate with anyone. If the criminal is armed, they should fire. There's no need to negotiate.
Now, meanwhile, the Police Minister, Bekele, has commended the police for their work in Marion Hill.
We support the police, and for now, the police have done what they were supposed to do to protect themselves and protect the community around here. The criminality in this province and this country is either the police or them. Simply put, police in this province and in the nationally on top of the situation. And we continue to encourage them to work on that way. The only thing that we forever call on the police, they shouldn't and they must not die with the guns in their hands when they approach the criminals that are armed.
Now, to get a proper analysis on this, we are joined by Professor Kholofelo Rakobo, criminologist and HOD at the Department of Law, Safety and Security Management at the Tshwane University of Technology. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us here on SABC News.
Good afternoon to the viewers.
Firstly, what should the police do when they are fired at by criminals?
Definitely, they have to use minimum force. That is proportional, that is appropriate as per the legal statute. The minute their lives are in danger, the minute the bystanders' lives are in danger, or the community, and also looking into the kind of an offender that they have to apprehend, they also have to utilize minimum force according to the Criminal Procedure Act, particularly Section 49, subsection 1 and 2. However, we have realized that there are loopholes with that because there are questions around the test of proportionality, which is not clearly outlined in the Criminal Procedure Act. Hence, there has been issues with police killings. Hence, now communities are even mentioning IPID, that they should come in, because as per that particular act, it looks like offenders have more rights than the law enforcers. It looks like in this case, police should have died for us to understand the seriousness of violence in South Africa. So they, according to them, as they were observing the circumstances around apprehending or effecting an arrest, that is, according to them, the right manner in which arrests were effected. So it was shooting and they felt in danger and they responded as per the prescript. However, there will be the debate around the proportionality, because the Criminal Procedure Act does not articulate the dynamism of the force, right, meted out to the police by the perpetrator, but it looks at the police response in particular. That is why we have the Section 49 is still riddled with what? With vagueness, and hence talks around the review of the Criminal Procedure Act. So we are questioning the proportionality because the existing legal mandate does not specify clearly what and how, what qualifies as a minimum or required force.
So if we focus for a moment on these specific incidents, Marion Hill and Mpumalanga, what's your take on how the police handled the situations on Wednesday specifically?
It looks like the death approach because of the kind of an offender that they were dealing with. Look at the ammunition that was found there or utilized during this. And this talks to what, like I always say, the crime landscape. We're dealing with an offender that is going to shoot first than to be arrested. So that is why possibly the law enforcers were responded the way they did. However, we can always talk to the kind of offenders we have that will go for police officers, because it's not like offenders don't understand the legal mandates that have loopholes that will have to protect them at some stage. Because the minute we mention IPID, we're talking resources, state resources at some point that are going to be utilized to look into the constitutionality of the decision taken by the police in particular when they were in fact protecting the state. It's not going to be more about the crimes that have been committed by these men and that were shot by the police, but the focus is going to be why were they gunned down in that manner. It's not going to be about the danger in which or the discretion the police utilized during the effecting of the arrest.
So people in some quarters feel that the role of the police is to arrest and not to kill.
Yeah. Indeed, it is to arrest, not to kill. However, there are circumstances around the seriousness or the conditions when arrest is being effected. So when now there's such ammunition, you are bound to act accordingly. And in most cases, in other cases, police have not acted accordingly. Hence, police killings. Do we even consider that in 2023 in particular, approximately more than 70 officers were gunned down by criminals? So do we consider that I don't think South Africa consider such at the moment, that their lives are in danger and the discrepancies or the delays in the review of some of the legal mandate have created this problem. But other than that, if you look at the crime level in South Africa in general, it is very, very high, and the decision around commission of crime also requires a response that is on par with that decision. The harsher punishment or crime punishment must always fit the crime. So for them, then now we're talking of a generic decision. Should you wish to commit such kinds of crime, should you wish to go against the police, that's going to happen. However, the disadvantage is that the constitution of the country does not go hand in hand with the kind of response. Hence the disparity and hence the talks around what should have happened, because justice should have been served, and legally is not what is things did not go according to the legal prescript. They should have been given their day in court. However, we were not there to judge or tap into the proportionality of the force and the circumstances that led to utilization of the death approach, as researchers will put it.
So, despite the fact that the police had an upper hand in both engagements, do you think that they are properly trained to deal with high-risk situations like those that took place on Wednesday?
They are. I think they are trained. However, my challenge and questions always have been around the desire to do what they are mandated to do. Like I will always say, it's not like they don't know who are the perpetrators or who commits crime and all that. But the decisions taken just shows what the pressure the law enforcers are under when it comes to issues of crime. We would always be saying, no, they don't know what they are doing. They are working with them. They don't respond. They don't apprehend. They don't do this and that. Now, there's also amount of pressure from the world, because this South Africa, we are now amongst the highest ranked country when it comes to criminality. So also the response, this number of killings talks to that issue, those issues as well.
The minister has often been criticised for openly telling the police to shoot, to kill when confronted by armed criminals. What is your take on that one?
That is not on par with the South African legal prescripts. Everyone has a right to life. We understand the ministers in most cases will be talking from a frustrated perspective, and there are forgetting that there are other mechanisms or way to address crime in South Africa. Like I would say, before the police can even come in, there are other socio-economic conditions. There are other issues that perpetuate level of criminality. Then you cannot come in to shoot when you failed to implement policies that were supposed to deal with issues of crime. When socio-economic conditions or South African policies don't have the South African socio-economic conditions in mind, then you come to kill. And like I say, the South African law suggests that everybody has a right to life and a day in court. So it's not always the case that whoever is found, whoever has been shot by the police was indeed part of the crime commission. Sometimes you hang with criminals not knowing what they've done, and out of those 9, we are not even sure how many were part of the commission of crime. So that is why the legal gurus all will be tapping into provision of an opportunity for any suspect to have their day in court, because it's not always that when you find 9 people and 2 rifles, we all knew of what transpired. But again, we were not there to analyze the proportionality of the force utilized and the danger in which the police officers found themselves in.
Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, Professor Kolofelo Rakubu from the Tshwane University of Technology. Now, we have a caller on the line, and it's Lucky in Johannesburg. Lucky, good afternoon.
Good day. How are you, sir?
I'm very well, thank you. What is your contribution today?
Well, my contribution specifically is that we really feel for the police. The police service is actually having their hands tied. And we are looking at this as criminals have more rights than the police. And the police will not just respond by firing. They obviously give orders. And they actually tell criminals or suspects, let's call them suspects, to say, please stand down. If you are having weapons, surrender. So they don't just start shooting. they actually give orders before they respond to any criminal activity. So responding through firing means that their lives are also in danger. We've lost a lot of lives with our police, and we can't keep on losing lives through criminal activities.
Lucky, thank you so much for your contribution and for joining us here this afternoon. And we invite you to be part of the show and also to call us on our studio number 011 714 0608 1 or 2. And we will now go to an ad break and we'll see you right after this. Rob, okay, we have a caller on the line and his name is Rob. Rob, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Rob. What is your contribution?
My contribution is regarding the police. Really, people are dying. We have got some on the extreme close to Kruger National Park. There is a police station there. I don't know whether the police, their work, they just put the certified copies. People are being killed, but we don't hear any arrest.
Okay, thank you so much.
Really.
Yeah.
No, really, it's bad.
Thank you so much, Rob, for joining us. And now we are going to go to a break and we'll see you on the Weekend Review right after this. Welcome back. This is the Week in Review and we like to hear from you as well. Watson is on the line now from Limpopo. Watson, good afternoon.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. What is your contribution today?
My contribution is that criminals are everywhere, and I think in terms of the law enforcement, I think the capacity is not enough. Everywhere there are hotspots that has been identified, but you find the police alone, they are not doing well. Now to my country, I feel like maybe the hotspot was supposed to have soldiers, some part of the soldier around, they were supposed to be there. So because criminals, they hold guns which are high caliber, and these police officers, they just have these smaller guns. That's why usually we've got a lot of police officers who end up even losing their lives. So that is the problem that I can say.
Thank you so much for your contribution. That's Watson in Limpopo. And we now go to Pule in Welkom. Pule, good afternoon.
And how are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. But my point is that if you look at the situation, the ammunition that the criminals are using as compared to the ones that the police force is using, you find that they're using a very high caliber of weapons, and at times that can always put not only police lives in danger, even the community at large. Now we need to applaud our police really with the minimal, with those minimal or other shortages of ammunition that they are using. If they manage to overcome this criminals with high caliber of ammunition that they are using. Mm-hmm. That's my first point. The second one is that when you look at crime at large, I would also say that it has got to be a community, a partnership between a community with police force. It shouldn't be responsibility only of police force. I think also if part of information is needed, if we could give our police information, therefore we could also combat that crime.
Thank you so much, Pule in Welkom. And now we move on to Lala in Polokwane in Limpopo for your contribution and your view on this matter. Good afternoon.
Good day, sir. My contribution on this matter is, I think I heard the fourth word of the fourth said about the Constitution, but I think our Constitution gives more rights to the criminals than to the policemen, because you see in most of the cases where the criminals are killing the policemen, you will not even see people going outside the court demanding that the criminals must not get a bail. But if that it has happened that a policeman has killed a criminal, you'll see many people going outside the court that the policeman must not get the bail because he has done that. So I think our constitution is not right. if indeed the Constitution gives people the right to live, it must also protect those victims who have been killed by the criminals, so that if a criminal is still a person, he must also be killed because he does not deserve to live unless he is able to violate other people's rights. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Lala in Polokwane. Right, now the IEC has cautioned those contesting the May polls to adhere to the Electoral Code of Conduct, or they will be held accountable. More than 50 political parties and independent candidates publicly pledged to behave in a manner that is conducive to free and fair elections. Meanwhile, the IEC has filed its answering affidavit at the Electoral Court regarding the MK Party's appeal over former President Jacob Zuma's disbarment to stand as a candidate. Now, for more on this, we are joined by Professor in Political Science at the University of South Africa and political analyst, Professor Dirk Coetzee. Dirk, good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much.
So how important is it for political parties to comply with the Code of Conduct in order to maintain peace and prevent incidents of political violence and intimidation, which can undermine the integrity of the electoral process and then deter citizens from exercising their democratic rights?
Yes, the Code of Conduct is indeed, I would say, the foundation of the election. That is what will determine whether the election is going to be free and fair, whether there is an equal playing field for all the political parties, where there's no limitations on them or restrictions, that there are no-go areas where they can't go to. There's no interference in their election campaigns, no damaging of their election material, for example. As well as the type of language that's being used, the terminology, that there's not provocative language used, that there's not incitement to violence. These are all aspects that are addressed by the Code of Conduct. And it is something that has been established now for many years. This is not the first election where they are using this. So I think most parties are used to the concept and the use of the Code of Conduct already.
So just this week, we saw the MK Party member, Viswan Gopal Reddy, appear in court for allegedly inciting public violence, and the MK youth leader, Bonginkosi Kanyile, who last month threatened unrest should it be removed from the ballot. So the INC insists the rule of law will be upheld for those who choose to incite violence. But what are some of the punitive measures that the Electoral Court will hand down to parties who breach the code?
Yes, I must just preface this point, and that is that I attended this event at the Gallagher Estate, and what was very significant is that the representative of the MK Party and the founder of it, Mr. Kumalu, he actually, in public, emphasized the fact that MK commits itself to the Code of Conduct, no violence, no intimidation, no interference, no sabotage of any aspect of the election. So for me, that was possibly one of the most significant components of what we saw there. The type of response is that both the IEC and the Electoral Court are responsible for enforcing the Code of Conduct. The IEC in the case of minor transgressions, and the court when it is more serious. And it can range from a warning given to the party or to those involved with the party, like some of their supporters or some of their candidates, to the most severe one is when that party is actually disqualified to continue in the election and is removed from the ballot paper. So it is a very wide range. It includes also fines, monetary fines, for example, as well as other ways of refraining from continuing with what they've done, apologizing in public, all sorts of things that's possible. The important point is that ultimately, with the Electoral Court in the background, it has the final judgment is a court judgment. So it's not something just coming from the IEC and that can be ignored. It has the same weight, the same status as a formal court judgment.
So let's take it back, Dirk, to the 3rd of April, 1992, where we saw unity amongst leaders Nelson Mandela, F.W. de Klerk and Mangosuthu Buthelezi, who attended an Easter church service at Moria. How crucial was that in the build-up to the 1994 election versus what we are seeing today? And what can we draw from the unity we saw from those leaders?
Well, what we've seen then was, what you are referring to, was actually quite a crisis period in the negotiation process, because there was a wide gap between those parties that were in favor of the negotiations and on the basis of a unified state, and that is where CODESA 1 came in, to parties like the IFP and some of the Bophuthatswana and some of the other homeland parties and conservative parties who were not in favor of it. And then ultimately, CODESA 1 came to a standstill, a deadlock, and then the Boy Patong massacre in 1992, which led to an absolute stalemate in the negotiations, and it was only resuscitated towards the end in September with the record of understanding between the two main negotiators, Cyril Ramaphosa and Ruth Meyer. So we think there was unity, but at that stage actually not. And why they went to have this show of being together was in order to rescue the negotiations. Today, obviously, we are in a different context. Those days of uncertainty about what will be the long-term political future is now there in a different form with us, and that is about what are going to be the form in which government will continue in future. Will it be still that of a one party that constitutes government, or will it be that of a coalition? And who will be in that formation if there is a coalition? So we are, again, I would call it at the same point in terms of the political significance. It's a political transition that we have entered now again as for a second time. And that makes it, that explains why this is such an important and significant election for all of us.
So the Umkhonto weSizwe Party says it will appeal the decision by the IEC to uphold an objection brought against former President and MK Party leader Jacob Zuma as a candidate for the party on its list of people to go to Parliament after the polls. Can you bring us up to speed regarding how this matter is likely to unfold?
Well, the Constitution as it is read, specifically Section 47(1)(e), says that a potential candidate who has been sentenced in the past for more than 12 months, who have served that sentence, and who have not yet been out of jail or completed their sentence for more than 5 years, that such a person will not be able to stand as a candidate. And on the basis of that, President Zuma was sentenced for 15 months and not 12 or less than 12. And he has been served his term as on parole, medical parole, concluded that less than 5 years from now, or since now. So from that same point of view, he was disqualified. But now there's arguments that says that if, for example, President Ramaphosa announced a general release of prisoners in general, or at the same time, then it will include persons who are on parole, any form of parole, that they will then be able to conclude their sentence immediately. And that on the basis of that, he enjoys a form of presidential immunity or presidential pardon, and that for that reason, this determination by the Constitution does not apply to him anymore. And that, I think, is going to be the main two arguments. The one to say the Constitution stands as it is, and then the Zuma team who will say, but because of these developments, it is actually not anymore applicable to me.
Can you comment on the electoral timetable? In other words, if the court action by the MK Party around Jacob Zuma or the trademark Umkhonto weSizwe, if that court action is delayed, can there be a delay to the electoral timetable in terms of when things must happen?
No, the timetable has been announced and everyone is bound by that. I think what is the possibility, and that's the second court case, which deals with the name as well as the logo and the colors of the party. If that is in favor of those who opposed the MK using the name and the colors and the logo, then it does not disqualify the MK party as a party. What it will then mean is that they will have to make amendments to the constitution and change their name and change the logo. If that can still be in time for example, the printing of the ballot papers, then that will obviously be implemented. Just remember, with the first election in 1994, the IFP joined this process 1 week before the 27th of April, 1994, 1 week before the election, and they still could make amendments to and have a sort of a sticker that they used to incorporate the IFP there. So the IEC in general will, I think, do their utmost in order to accommodate any type of changes that might be there. Because if a party is disqualified because of practical considerations, not because of the principles, that will cause major problems.
Dirk, thank you so much for joining us today. Professor Dirk Coetzee from UNISA is a political analyst, and we'll be back right after this. Welcome back. Let's now turn our attention to the story that has been making headlines, where a group of unemployed doctors in KwaZulu-Natal went to hand over their CVs and a memorandum demanding that the healthcare budget be increased to accommodate over 700 qualified medical practitioners. The department in the province was given 14 days to respond. The doctors were met by Deputy Health Minister Sibongiseni Dlomo, who said the department was working to address the issue. This is what some of the doctors had to say.
The doctor-to-patient ratio is far from what WHO recommends, which is 1 to 1,000 patients. Currently, our colleagues have told me that we are sitting at 1 to 3,000 patients. So we are here, we are available. We are available to work in rural areas. We are available to work anywhere in the country. We love our communities. We want to work for our communities and with our communities.
The 200 somewhat posts that they make available is, first of all, not going to be enough for all of us to get a job. Secondly, all of the posts that are currently being advertised are advertised according to employment equity targets. So not everybody is given the same opportunity when applying for those posts. The other thing is bursary holders. There's a lot of bursary holders who are given first preference because of the debt that they have to the government.
Right, let's understand the situation a bit better, bringing the chairperson of the South African Medical Association, Dr. Mvuyisi Mzukwa. And good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good afternoon to you and to your viewers, and thanks for having me in your program.
So what kind of interventions do striking doctors think will solve this problem?
Well, first of all, I think the South African Medical Association is really deeply saddened and disappointed by the approach that government has taken in as far as addressing the concerns that are raised by these unemployed doctors. You will recall that this was a promise made by the minister in Parliament that come 1st of April, these doctors will be absorbed into the system. We know how the challenges are in the system, the dire shortages of healthcare workers, especially doctors, and in the rural areas. But now we have these smart, young, qualified medical doctors who are sitting at home, who've been trained here in our country. And, on top of that, we've used taxpayers' money to train them. But we do not find them qualified enough to absorb them in the system. Yet we've got so much shortage in our system. So these doctors really are needed, not only in the rural areas, but also in the urban areas, because even there's dire shortages of these practitioners. So if you don't give them an opportunity now, you are pushing them to the private sector, you are pushing them to go abroad, and be absorbed by other countries, which is exactly what we do not want as the country.
So one of the issues raised previously is that priority is given to those who come from Cuba. How true is that?
Well, we do not have any knowledge of that occurrence, but all we know is that we've got all of them, including those that are trained in Cuba, who are unemployed. So we really don't know, if there's any such a thing. But our intention at SAMA is that these are South African doctors, whether they are trained in the country or trained outside of the country. They need to be given a chance, to serve our communities. The poor, the indigent. Those that have been malaligned by the system.
So when doctors are not finding employment, what are the reasons given by the department?
Well, the department has been telling us that they are not getting funding from Treasury. Treasury is not giving them money, and they don't have funded posts in the provinces. You noted that recently the KwaZulu-Natal Department of Health released, in fact, regurgitated an old circular to say that there is no cost containment when it comes to healthcare professionals. But we know that that is a lie, because if you understand, you need a premier to actually confirm or approve the appointment of such a professional. So there is still cost containment in full swing. So we don't understand why would people just go out and lie to the public, especially when they are highly regarded as the MECs of this world.
So do you believe that there are no opportunities in KZN hospitals and clinics and other parts of the country as well?
No, I believe that there are opportunities out there. We all know that there's a care shortage. We know that clinics are without doctors, district hospitals are without doctors, some tertiary institutions are without doctors. So it can be that there are no opportunities for those doctors. In fact, we've been told by the department that they've got about 1,500 posts out there. So we don't know what's the hold. Why are they wasting time on employing these doctors when actually they should be, relieving the burden on the already employed doctors who are, suffering from burnout, who are really struggling, to attend to the numbers that are out there. We know that the population has grown, and we expect that government would respond accordingly.
So what are the options for the unemployed doctors? They're on the ground now. What can they do?
Well, the first option, which is the most important option, is that government must absorb them, because one, they want to work, serve their communities in the state. The second one is that, government would have to think in terms of supporting them financially to start practices, and beef up the primary healthcare sector. So, but they need assistance, financial assistance from government. If you can assist salons, to start their practices, why can't you start assisting doctors? The other option, which is unfortunate, is that these doctors would be employed by other countries, taken away from South Africa, and that would be very unfortunate for this country.
Thank you so much for joining us here today. That was the chairperson of the South African Medical Association, Dr. Mvuyisi Mzukwa. Now, moving to elsewhere on the continent, the Minister of International Relations, Dr. Naledi Pandor, has arrived in Kigali in Rwanda ahead of the commemoration of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsis tomorrow. President Cyril Ramaphosa and former South African President Thabo Mbeki are also expected to attend the commemoration. Our international editor, Sophie Mokoena, spoke to Dr. Alice Urusaro Karekezi, the Secretary of the Supreme Court, ahead of the commemoration.
Incitation of political structure, naturalization of violence against Tutsi, adoption of impunity laws, systemic discrimination within the country, and political mobilization towards killing, organization at the central level, and mobilization of the population towards that. This has taken decades, more or less, a bit less than 4 decades. And systematically calling the population whenever there's a political crisis to kill their neighbors, to kill their family members, to kill the colleagues, and to kill those with whom they live day by day in similar conditions, has been among the elements. That for the internal causes. Beyond the internal causes, there have been external causes. The backing of a European power, to name France, governments that trained, contributed to push, to control identities of people and shelter the killers. In addition to that, the silence of other actors who would not have wanted to have to implement the spirit and the letters of the 1948 Genocide Convention. Prevention and arresting.
You speak to us about, or you're talking to us about the 1948 Convention on the Genocide. Today we hear that France is saying France could have stopped the genocide. Yes, of course, too little, too late. But what is your view in relation to what the president of France is saying?
Two views, two important views. First of all, the views of a lecturer of conflict management and student of conflict and war, as well as genocide. I would say it is not often that we have had that. This is a big step. President Emmanuel Macron of France has made compared to his predecessors. He has gone the farthest in recognition, but now the person in me who not only has followed closely what has happened, but has been living in France from 91 to 95, who has been involved in raising awareness, along with civil society in France, organizations, our colleagues from the Fédération des Travailleurs de France and the Rwandan community in France. We have been tirelessly pointing at the media that were denouncing that. As long as specific political and military actors in France would not be in the dock, it will always be not enough.
You also participated during oppression in South Africa in terms of mobilizing for those who were fighting the regime outside South Africa. Can you tell us the story?
I came in Paris after the assassination of Dalcy September and before the assassination of Chris Hani, as part of what they used to call the MRAP, the Movement Against Racism in Paris. I came to volunteer at the office of the ANC in Paris with my colleague Mkize and others. I witnessed two of the most important events of the end of the 20th century with a mixture of pain and joy. I witnessed, and I was lucky enough to be in the office of the ANC at that time where the abolition of the apartheid was taking place. But at the same time, I witnessed firsthand on TV my people being murdered. I always remember the hope we had when Nelson Mandela Madiba came in Paris. I remember I took the bouquet of flowers that was given to him. But I didn't know the same year, the same moment, our brothers and sisters of South Africa will be liberated from legal apartheid. We will be leaving one of the wounds of our generation.
Senegal's newly elected president, Bassirou Diomaye Faye, has appointed his political mentor, Ousmane Sonko, as the nation's prime minister. The two leaders hope to work together to tackle the rising cost of living in the West African country. SABC News correspondent Ahmed Rufai reports.
Ousmane Sonko's appointment as Senegal's prime minister comes as no surprise to many people in the country. The 49-year-old politician was at the forefront of Bassirou Faye's election campaign. Sonko relinquished his position as the opposition's presidential candidate to Faye after he himself was banned from running for the office because he was convicted of insurrection and other crimes. In return, Bassirou Faye named Sonko as his prime minister immediately after he was sworn into office on Tuesday. Sonko's first task will be to present a list of ministerial candidates for President Faye's approval. He has pledged to work diligently to ensure the success of the new government. The two leaders have a tough challenge trying to stabilize the country's economy and tackling the rising cost of living. They say they also hope to work together to fight corruption and create jobs for young people. Nabel Ahmed Rufai, SABC News, Accra, Ghana.
And that is where we leave it for today.